Welcome back to High Country Gold and Silver. Today I have a specimen that perfectly fits the soul of this channel, because even though we are staring at brilliant cherry red rhodochrosite, this story starts with a familiar footnote in the Colorado High Country: a silver mine. This piece is from the Sweet Home mine in the Alma District of Park County, Colorado. Every flash of metallic sulfide you see on this specimen is not just decoration on a pretty rock. It is the fingerprint of a working silver vein system that, as a bonus, grew the finest rhodochrosite crystals anywhere on the planet. In this video, I'm going to tour the specimen the way a collector and an ore geologist would. Then we will hit the Sweet Home history from silver mining to specimen mining. And finally, we will tie the textures you can actually see to the hydrothermal plumbing that made this mine so famous. If you enjoy ore specimens and mining geology, hit like, subscribe to High Country Gold and Silver, and ring the notification bell. Now let us do the quick geography flyover. Start wide over the Rocky Mountains, then drop into central Colorado and find the Mosquito Range. Slide toward the little town of Alma, perched high in the mountains. And then move into Buckskin Gulch, on the flanks around Mount Bros. This is classic hard rock country, with historic silver and base metal districts tucked into steep terrain. And the Sweet Home sits right in that belt of mineralization that helped build Colorado mining history. Alright, let us get into what you can actually see on the specimen. The label reads Rhodochrosite with quartz, sphalerite, galena, fluorite, pyrite, and hubnerite, and it gives the size as 18.9 by 15.7 by 4.8 centimeters with a mass of 2,215 grams. In hand, this is a true cabinet plate, heavy and substantial, rather than a delicate pocket miniature more common for the location. One broad face is clearly the display face, and it is loaded with texture. The first thing you notice is quartz, but not just massive, milky quartz. This face is coated in a dense druce of thin, splintery, needle-like quartz crystals, like a frost of glass shards pointing in every direction. That habit is important because it screams open space. It means fluids had room to grow crystals into a cavity or a widened fracture, rather than simply sealing a crack as a solid, featureless plug. Across that quartz druce, you get scattered rhodochrosite crystals in bright pink to deep raspberry red. On this particular piece, the rhodochrosite is not a single, huge showstopper crystal. Instead, it is spread across the face as dozens of vivid accents, popping out of the quartz like little flags. Some crystals look blocky to rhombohedral, some look slightly irregular or partially coated, and that is exactly what you expect on a pocket wall that kept experiencing new mineral growth events over time. Now look closely at what sits with the rhodochrosite. You see a lot of dark, nearly black patches and clusters sprinkled across the quartz, especially concentrated in the central zone of the display face. On camera, these have a subdued metallic to resinous look, and given the label, the best match is sphalerite mixed with other sulfides. Sphalerite is zinc sulfide, and in polymetallic silver veins, it commonly appears as dark masses or chunky grains when it is iron-rich. It is one of the classic base metal minerals that travels with silver systems in the Rockies. You also get distinct brassy flashes in a few spots, especially when the light grazes the surface at certain angles. Those bright gold-toned sparkles read as pyrite, iron sulfide, and even when the pyrite is not forming big cubes, it can appear as granular clusters or small crystal faces catching the light like tiny mirrors. Galena is on the label as well. Galena is lead sulfide, and it is the other classic companion to silver in these vein systems. On this rotation, I do not see obvious big lead-grey cubic galena crystals flashing clean cleavage faces. But that does not mean it is not there. Galena often hides inside the darker sulfide patches until you see a fresh break or a reflective face. With galena called out on the label, it is best understood as present in the ore patches, even if it is not dramatically expressed in the specimen. Fluorite is also on the label, and on this front face you can easily see where it lives. Up in the upper right corner along the top ridge, there's a distinct pale blue to blue-grey zone made of blocky, cubic-looking fragments and cleavagey masses that stand out from the splintery quartz druze. It is not the bold, deep purple show fluorite people picture, but it is clearly a separate fluorite-rich patch sitting right above and beside the darker sulfide clusters. And that matters, because even subtle fluorite is a chemical fingerprint at sweet home. Fluorine-bearing fluids were part of the system, and that fluorine-rich chemistry helps explain why this vein can carry such a complex suite alongside the rhodochrosite. And then we have hubnerite, the manganese-rich tungsten oxide in the wolframite series. Hubnerite is one of those minerals that instantly raises the geology temperature in your mind. Tungsten is not a casual element in most veins. If hubnerite is present, it tells you the hydrothermal system had a magmatic-style chemistry capable of transporting and depositing tungsten, often alongside fluorine-rich components. On the specimen, there are some darker, elongated mineral grains tucked into the matrix that fit hubnerite habit. It anchors this specimen in a more specialized hydrothermal story than a simple lead-zinc vein. Now, one of the best parts of this specimen shows up when it rotates edge-on. When you get a clear view of the plate thickness, and you can see the internal architecture of the vein. There is a bright, milky ribbon of quartz that runs along the edge like a spine, bordered by darker grey quartz and wall rock zones. That ribbon texture is a classic sign of repeated fracture opening and sealing. The vein opened, quartz lined the opening. The fracture sealed, then movement reopened it again, and new quartz filled another slice. Over and over, you build these bands and seams that look like a layered ribbon. Along that edge, you also see small cavities and rough buggy zones where crystals grew into space. Even without one huge open pocket exposed, the combination of ribbon, quartz, plus druzy crystal lining tells you the vein was alive and dynamic. It was not one single event. It was episodic, with pulses of fluid and repeated movement on the same structure. When the specimen turns to the back side, the personality changes. The back looks more massive and grey, with a diagonal seam where the quartz druce thickens into a more crystalline lining. The rhodochrosite is much sparser on that side, just a few bright pink clusters peeking along the upper ridge. That is a very realistic pocket wall lesson. Mineralization is uneven. One face can be the interior of the cavity where crystals grew, while the opposite face can be the more sealed, less open, more massive side of the same vein segment. So as a display and teaching piece, this specimen is doing several jobs at once. It gives you unmistakable Sweet Home rhodochrosite color in multiple crystals. It shows you the association with sulfides that belong to a working silver vein, and it shows the physical structure of the vein itself, especially in that ribboned quartz edge, where you can literally see the record of repeated hydrothermal pulses. Now, let us tie this into the mine story, and this is where I really want to thread in the channel theme. Sweet Home was discovered in the year 1873 and developed for silver ore. That is not a casual footnote. In the Alma District, silver, lead, and zinc were the economic drivers for decades, and Sweet Home fits that pattern. The mine was worked intermittently with moderate success as a silver mine, and it eventually closed as a traditional silver operation in the year 1967. But here is the twist that makes Sweet Home legendary. Inside those silver veins, the hydrothermal system also grew rhodochrosite, a manganese carbonate, as a gangue mineral. In many mines, gangue minerals are the waste minerals you curse while chasing the metal. At Sweet Home, the so-called gangue became the treasure because the system produced rhodochrosite crystals with exceptional saturation, clarity, and form. There were important specimen finds before the modern era, including a famous pocket discovery in the year 1966 that produced the Alma Queen specimen. That kind of discovery helped push Sweet Home into collector lore even as the mine's economic life was fading. Then the modern chapter begins, and it is one of the most important specimen mining stories in the world. In the year 1991, the Sweet Home mine was reopened not as a silver mine, but specifically as a rhodochrosite specimen mine. And that change in purpose is enormous. Instead of blasting for ore tonnage, the goal became finding pockets and extracting pocket plates intact. That main specimen mining era ran for roughly 14 years, and in the year 2004, the original Sweet Home portal was sealed. But the story did not end there. A new access tunnel, known as the Detroit City Portal, was driven roughly 200 feet uphill from the original, beginning work in the year 2016, with specimen recovery starting in the year 2018. That Detroit City Portal kept producing Sweet Home rhodochrosite, fluorite, and associated ore minerals before its permanent closure in early September of 2024. During that modern period, Sweet Home produced iconic pieces like the Alma King and the Crystal Wall Pocket reconstruction that now sits in the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. It is hard to overstate what that era did for the mineral world. Sweet Home became the modern reference locality for gemmy red rhodochrosite, and it did it through careful, deliberate mining methods designed to preserve crystals rather than destroy them. And this is where I bring it back to this specimen. A plate like this is exactly the kind of material that makes sense in a specimen mining context. You are looking at a vein slice that likely came out as a chunk of pocket wall or pocket-adjacent vein, where one face was exposed to open space and grew that druzy quartz lining with rhodochrosite and sulfides perched right on top. That is pocket wall geology turned into a collectible object. Now, let us go deeper into the geology, because Sweet Home's mineral suite is the reason it ties so naturally to high country gold and silver. Even though the star is rhodochrosite, the system is fundamentally polymetallic and silver-rich. The Gemological Institute of America describes the Sweet Home veins as polymetallic, principally containing silver, lead, zinc, and copper, and it notes that the primary ore mineral is silver-bearing tetrahedrite. That is a perfect bridge to our channel theme. Silver at Sweet Home is not just native silver wires. It is often locked up in sulfides and sulfur salts. Tetrahedrite can be silver-rich, and related minerals in that family can carry substantial silver content. That is one reason Sweet Home was developed as a silver mine in the first place. United States Geological Survey work on the Alma District describes a vuggy quartz tetrahedrite fluorite rhodochrosite vein at the Sweet Home mine, and it lists additional sulfides like pyrite, sphalerite, galena, and chalcopyrite as part of the assemblage. Now, what kind of system makes that combination, including tungsten in the form of hubnerite? Geochemically, Sweet Home is widely interpreted as part of the Colorado Mineral Belt's mid-tertiary magmatic hydrothermal story. United States Geological Survey discussion relates veins in the Alma area to the climax igneous mineralizing episode, and it suggests the Sweet Home vein is related to that same episode. In plain language, the idea is that deep magmatic activity in this region produced the heat and the chemically complex fluids that drove hydrothermal circulation and ore deposition, not just at climax, but in related veins and peripheral systems nearby. A key peer-reviewed study by Luders and co-authors in Mineralium Deposide models Sweet Home as a hydrothermal system evolving above a hypothesized granite cupola. That concept is a great way to understand why fluorite and tungsten show up. Granite-related fluids can be enriched in fluorine, and fluorine helps transport metals by forming complexes in solution. Tungsten mobility also tends to be associated with more specialized, high-temperature hydrothermal conditions that are common in evolved magmatic environments. Now bring that high-level model back down to what you can actually see on this specimen. The ribboned quartz edge is your structural record of repeated pulses. The druzy quartz on the face is direct evidence of open space growth in vugs and cavities. The sulfides are the ore stage minerals that carry the base metal and silver story. And the rhodochrosite is a later stage gangue mineral that crystallized in open pockets under conditions that favored manganese carbonate deposition. Even the distribution of rhodochrosite on this plate makes geological sense. It is concentrated on one face where open space and crystal growth were strongest, and it is sparse on the back where the structure was more sealed and massive. That is exactly what you expect if one face was the interior lining of a cavity and the other was more of the vein's exterior or a sealed margin. From a collector's standpoint, this piece is valuable because it is not just a pretty face. It is a readable slice of a silver vein system that happens to produce world-class rhodochrosite. The label suite gives you manganese carbonate, silica, fluorine, tungsten, and the lead-zinc sulfide pair that follows silver through so many rocky mountain districts. You can hold this and talk about mining history, ore minerals, and hydrothermal processes without needing to fill in gaps. And I want to emphasize the Sweet Home identity here. A lot of people think of Sweet Home as the rhodochrosite mine, full stop. But historically, it was a silver mine. And mineralogically, it is a silver-bearing polymetallic vein system. Rhodochrosite is the glamorous mineral that collectors celebrate, but the mine's original purpose was silver, and the vein's core identity includes the sulfides and sulfur salts that carried that silver. That is exactly why this specimen belongs on high country gold and silver. It is a perfect example of how precious metal mining and mineral collecting overlap in the real world. Now, let us do the quick comparison for context. Around the world, rhodochrosite can come from manganese deposits, skarns, and epithermal systems, and it can appear as massive banded material or as crystals. Sweet Home is special because the rhodochrosite forms in vuggy veins alongside classic ore minerals, with strong structural control and repeated opening that creates pockets. That is why you get the dramatic crystal on quartz plates that are so recognizable. The Sweet Home look is unmistakable. Bright red rhodochrosite scattered across a quartz-lined pocket wall with dark sulfides as the contrast. Alright, let us wrap it up. This is a 2,215-gram cabinet plate from the Sweet Home mine, Alma District, Park County, Colorado, and it carries rhodochrosite with quartz, sphalerite, galena, fluorite, pyrite, and hubnerite. On the rotation, you can clearly see the open-space druzy quartz, the scattered vivid rhodochrosite crystals, the dark sulfide patches, and the ribboned quartz structure on the edge that records repeated hydrothermal pulses. And threaded through the whole story is exactly what this channel is about. Sweet Home began as a silver mine, built on polymetallic silver ore, and it became famous because that same silver vein system also grew some of the finest rhodochrosite crystals on Earth. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit like, subscribe to High Country Gold and Silver, and ring the notification bell. And leave me a comment telling me what you want to see next. More Sweet Home material with strong ore associations. Another classic Colorado silver camp. Or a totally different deposit type that still ties back to precious metals. Thanks for watching.